The following is a presentation of The Cody Springer Show, a Springer Podcast Network production.
There's something about children's entertainment that makes us let our guard down. Bright colors, friendly characters, stuffed animals, playgrounds, games. Things that are supposed to make a child feel safe. But what happens when something that looks like it was made for children isn't actually made for children? What if the colorful characters aren't here to make your kid laugh? What if the playground isn't a place where your kid is supposed to feel safe? What if underneath all of that, there's something seriously disturbing waiting for them? That's the concept behind something called Plushy's Playground. And recently, a mother discovered that her 6-year-old daughter had found it online. She went looking to see what her daughter had been watching, and what she found terrified her. She wasn't the only person who became uncomfortable with what she found, because now there are serious questions being raised about this project and the creator behind it, about whether this kind of horror belongs in a space that can be accessed by children, and about something much bigger than one website. How much responsibility do we have to protect our kids from what they can find on the internet? Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Cody Springer Show. Hope everyone's doing good today. This is episode 148. I'm going to be talking about Plushy's Playground. Yeah, this is kind of a different episode for me. I don't usually talk about stuff like this, but you know, it's causing controversy. So, I figured I'd come up here and talk about it. Because it's in a really important conversation, because it has to do with internet safety when it comes to children. And as you guys know, I'm a father myself, and what I saw, it kind of warranted me talking about this today, because I had an episode already formatted and planned out on a completely different topic. But when I saw this, I'm like, all right, I gotta definitely come up here and talk about this, because this is definitely different. But yes, we talk about that. But before I do, I want to make you guys aware that I was on my wife's podcast this past Sunday, the Crystal Show. I made a guest appearance on her show, and we had an hour-long conversation talking about a variety of different things, talking about parenting, mental health, boundaries, and stuff like that. Like some really hard-hitting subjects that I feel like we both felt that was important to talk about. But yeah, you guys can check me out on episode number 3 of the Crystal Show, and just support the Sprinter Podcast Network. And as you guys can see, we've come up with a different presentation style for the show, with this overlay here. So as you can see, I'm here in the top right corner, and then you can see here in the middle, we're gonna bring out some visuals. So you'll be seeing some visual content, instead of just a talking head all the time. We feel like it's going to really enhance our shows. But anyways, let's move on to what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about Plushy's Playground. And what is Plushy's Playground? Basically, it's like it's a website. The website's plushysplayground.org. or .com. I think it's .org, but anyways. So it was created by Jordan Graham, he's a film editor, producer, director, and I think he recently did work on Backrooms. So if you're familiar with Backrooms, yeah, he was a part of that. But basically, Plushy's Playground is his creation. It's an analog horror ARG type of game. And ARG, if you're not familiar, stands for alternate reality game. And it has a children's playground aesthetic. And there's a person, or I don't know if you can call him a person, but there's a character that you interact with in this game called Mr. Plushy. And it's interactive, and there's puzzles and videos, and the videos look like they were filmed in the 90s. It just kind of looks like that. um and yeah, so basically the website, the game is kind of like geared towards kids, but there is a version for the grown-ups, the adults. And basically you're not just watching a horror story play out, you're investigating one. All right, let's talk about how disturbing this Plushy's Playground really is. I mean, right here, yeah, right here you can see I have the website open, plushiesplayground.org. And when you come across this website, you're supposed to drag one of the plushies over to Mr. Plushy here in order to get onto the website. And they have several plushies there. They have Barney the dinosaur, Elmo from Sesame Street, and a couple other ones here. Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of off-putting, right from the jump here. I'm not going to drag it over, but basically, yeah, I mean, it's a children's setting. You get on there, there's this playground, and you have Mr. Plushy, and he only likes kids. He only likes kids here, and the emphasis is completely on children. And and I've watched some of the videos on this website, and whenever the kids bring up their mom and dad, Mr. Plushy gets kind of pissed off. His demeanor completely changes. And basically he traps the kids in this playground. And there's this girl, when she turns 18, she gets murdered by Mr. Plushy here. And that is fucking just wow. Yeah, yeah, this stuff right here is creepy. And here's the thing, people might think like, oh well, Cody, you have another podcast called Creepy AF. Yes, I do. I do have Creepy AF, but all of my stories are centered around adults. And this right here is about children. And yeah, it's a fictional world here and whatnot, but at the same time, like the content here is just disturbing. And the fact that they've actually geared this towards kids, I just, yeah, there's something that just doesn't sit well with me when it comes to this website. But yeah, that's basically what it is. It's about kidnapping, the disturbing videos, and there's death and murder elements to this. And yeah, I mean, basically, the Mr. Plushy character is basically, he only likes kids, and and he does not like adults at all. And if the children become adults, they die. Or if you tell your parents about, what's going on, then you die. Like it's wow. I've never seen anything like this before, and I find it quite fucking disturbing. I really do. And the fact that the kids can play this online game where the predator is telling you these things. It Wow, it is just quite disturbing, and this is something that I will not ever expose my son to. My son's 5 years old, but the fact that children around his age have already been exposed to this is just disturbing. All right, now I'm going to talk about the person who made me aware of Plushy's Playground, and this is TikTok creator Katie May. I got her username right there if you want to go check out her video. But yeah, she's the one who made me aware of it. I watched her video, and she was pretty pissed off about the whole thing. And to be honest, it's understandable, for her to feel the way she did. Her 6-year-old daughter was on her tablet, and she somehow stumbled upon the Plushys Playground website, and when she discovered that she was on there, and then she started looking into it herself, trying to figure out what this was all about. And what she discovered was, terrifying. It was disturbing. And she felt like, they were grooming kids, and that this kind of stuff was just harmful to children. Now, yeah, her anger, I believe, is justified. I mean, seeing a kid, being exposed to that kind of shit, yeah, I think it would make any parent upset, that their kid somehow got access to this. And like, oh man, I put parental controls all over this thing, and they somehow still got onto this thing. Like, how did this happen? you know so yeah, I mean, definitely a frustrating situation. um However, I don't know if we can 100% for sure say that this game, this website, Plushy's Playground, is directly grooming children. I don't think we can absolutely 100% say that. Now, Katie and other people might come from my head with me saying that, but, I mean, yeah, is the content disturbing? Yes, it is. It is. I 100% agree. Kids should not be on this shit at all. But I don't know if necessarily that was the intent of the creator. Now, I have to admit, some of the content in here just very questionable, you know, but a lot of the times, we have creators who are often misunderstood when it comes to them putting out their projects and stuff of that nature. Um, me, I've been misunderstood at times myself, when it came to stuff I've said and stuff of that nature. Not talking about kids, no. I'm talking about separate situations, but by no means am I defending the creator here. Because I'm not. You know, I mean, I'm pointing out what's been presented to me so far, but I cannot 100% for sure say that the intent behind this whole thing is to groom children and stuff like that. I mean, is the content predatory, that we're seeing? Yes, 100%. But, I mean, with Katie here, I just think, she's voicing her frustration and anger with, her child being exposed to, the kind of thing that she got exposed to. So yeah, I mean, I understand the anger. You give your kid a device, you put parental controls on it, and you're hoping, or that your belief is, oh, this is completely safe. I put parental controls on this. They can't get on any websites, that are bad, and then they somehow get on Plushy's playground. So yes, I completely understand her anger. But another thing that she said that I want to point out is that, she feels like people here in America don't give a fuck about this kind of stuff. That kids are being exposed to this kind of stuff, or, we're not doing enough to protect our children. And you know what? I do think she's right about some parents, because there are some parents that just don't give a flying fuck about their kids. They don't. They do not. And that is just the facts. There's parents out there who don't give a singular fuck about their kids, and they just and yeah, and then those are the kids who have bad shit happen to them. And it's because the parent wasn't there enough, or didn't care enough to, prevent them from the dangers out there of being online, or, being around people they shouldn't have been around. Yeah, there are parents who do not give a fuck, but there are parents like me who give a shit about their child, who love their child to death, and will do anything to protect them. Anything. And I'm telling you, I will fight to the death if I have to for my child. 102,000% would fight to the death for my child in order to protect them. Yes, because I feel like that's your duty as a parent. Because if you're not willing to go to that length for your kid, then why did you even have kids? Like, I don't understand. Like, some parents say, oh, well, I don't know if I could kill somebody to protect my kid. Then you're weak, in my opinion. If you're not willing to put yourself on the line for your child, then that just goes to show that you're just weak. Because any human being can create a child, but you also have to have that parental instinct, kind of like, when, wolves have their cubs, and how they will fiercely defend their cubs to the death. That's basically kind of how I am in my mindset. If my child was in danger, if anyone presented a threat to my child, then you best believe that I will fight to the death to protect my child. But this woman right here, she brought this to a lot of people's attention, and she posted a screen recording as well from the Plushy Playground website, talking about the content pretty much. And yeah, I mean, yeah, so yeah, go follow Katie May on TikTok. And yeah, I think a lot of parents need to be more aware of what's going on with Plushy's Playground. All right, let's talk about the creator behind Plushy's Playground, and his name is Jordan Graham. He, like I said earlier, he I believe he was on the project Backrooms, and he's also done some other projects as well. But yes, he is the person behind Plushy's Playground. Like I said, he's a filmmaker, a horror creator, and he has interest in turning Plushy's Playground into an actual movie. He has not said anything about people's response to the allegations of grooming or anything like that. I'm not going to speculate on whether or not this person, Jordan Graham, is. I'm not going to speculate about his motives or anything like that, but maybe he just came up with this idea and said, "Hey, I think this could really work. I think this would be something we could potentially make into a movie, and I think this would be a great way to hype it up." Um, but I think he might need to dial it back a little bit, when it comes to potentially thinking about making it a film, because yeah, people feel strongly about this. And while I mean, here's the thing, I like horror movies, I'm a horror movie fan. um if you guys really know me, you know that I'm a fan of Michael Myers, Halloween. I also like the Scream movies, some of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, some of the Friday the 13th movies, not all of them. So yeah, I'm a fan of the genre, but at the same time, I think there's a line, I think. And this guy, he's definitely crossing it. And I think he needs to be really careful from here on out on how he approaches things, because yeah, I don't think he wants that reputation of being referred to as a groomer or someone who, you know, yeah, because people probably think that this is what he fantasizes about, and that he's bringing those fantasies into his art form. And I don't think that's really what's going on here. But at the same time, you have to admit that the content is kind of like, whoa, what the fuck, dude? This is definitely crossing lines here. This is like taking the envelope and ripping it up, pretty much. But yeah, I'm not going to speculate on his motives, because he may not even feel that way at all. He might just think like, oh, this is just a creative thing that I'm doing. And here's the thing, I would like to invite Jordan Graham onto my show in order to explain further what the intent is behind Plushy's Playground, and we can get into his mind and see where he's at with what this whole thing's all about. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm not going to speculate here and say for sure that there's some like questionable shit going on. Because maybe like I said, maybe this is all just an misunderstanding. Maybe he's misunderstood. But at the same time, I will admit, I am seeing both sides to it. Some of this content is pretty disturbing. All right, let's talk about responsibility here. When it comes to children viewing things online, because kids have so much access to stuff, just like everybody else does. There's TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, social media everywhere, right? But here's the thing, I don't think kids should even be on social media, period. But unfortunately, kids get access to these kinds of things. And then, there's stuff out there like Roblox, that kids can get onto. And, I can do a whole nother podcast about Roblox and Stranger Danger, but, but that's a whole nother subject for another time. But who is ultimately going to be responsible for what kids see and not see? People can say like, "Oh, it's the parents." Yeah, I mean, yeah, it is ultimately on the parent what their child sees content wise. But I think also, that creators as well need to bear some responsibility. There needs to be some content warnings. There needs to be some like age restriction limits and all that. But yeah, I mean, but it's disheartening when a parent puts parental controls on their child's device, and somehow, some way, their child gets onto something that they should not be on, and that is the issue, and therein lies the problem. So yes, I mean, I do think that there needs to be some shared responsibility there. That's not just on the parents; it's on the creators, the websites where this stuff gets posted. Yeah, I definitely think there needs to be some shared responsibility that goes hand in hand with what's going on here. Um, but yeah, I mean, when you look at Plushy's playground, it's all cutesy and whatnot on the outside, but very disturbing on the inside. And, this is going to be a problem, I feel, unless, until more and more parents start discovering what Plushy's playground's all about. But yes, I do think that the responsibility is not only on the parents, but it's also on the creators themselves. It needs to come with content warnings and some age restriction. All right, guys, let's get into some final thoughts here before I close this out. Um, yeah, like kids these days, they have access to more information than ever before, more than any other generation before them. And, we need to be mindful of that. We need to take that seriously. However, we can't just put our children in a protective bubble, but we have to pay attention. We have to use parental controls when and wherever we can, know what they're watching, and know what they're playing on their tablets or whatever electronic devices they have. And then talk to them. Talk to them and teach them what to do when something feels wrong. And then stop assuming that something labeled as kids is automatically safe. Because just because, you put on YouTube for your kid and it's YouTube Kids, you can't automatically assume that everything they watch on YouTube Kids is going to be deemed safe and appropriate. There's stuff that's fallen through the cracks. But yeah, where do you guys land on this? Do you feel like Plushy's playground is predatory and it's grooming and it needs to be, taken off the internet? Or do you think it's just, some fictional story and it's just Jordan Graham being a creator and he's just, putting his project out there to the world? How do you guys feel about Plushy's playground? Let me know in the comments. And yeah, I think there's a line here, and it's being crossed, in my opinion. Um But, people might agree, disagree. Let me know. I love to hear what you have to say. But all right, guys, I'm going to get out of here. So, yeah, it's important for your kids to be safe online and out there in public as well. So, take care, and I will talk to you all very soon.